In the previous lessons on methods, we briefly looked at the return type and return statement of a method. In this lesson, we will look at it in depth. This is a very important concept in methods and many students get confused in this. So watch this complete video attentively to master this concept. The first important thing to remember is that returning a value is optional for a method. Depending on what task a method is performing, a method may or may not return a value. For example, the compute area and compute perimeter methods that we saw earlier were calculating and returning the area and perimeter of the rectangle respectively. Now, let's say I want to write a method greet to print a greeting for the user. Here I don't have any value that I can return from my method greet. Does it mean that I cannot write a method for this task? The answer is no. Let's switch to BlueJ and see how to write it. I will write a method which does not return any value like this. Public static void. As this method is not going to return any value, so its return type will be void. Name of my method will be greet. It will take the name of the user as input. Inside the method, I'll print the greeting. Let me execute this method in BlueJ. I will right-click on the class and select this method greet. Greet takes a string argument as input. On this screen, BlueJ is asking me to specify the value of this argument. I will give the value as Piyush. As it is a string, so I have enclosed it in double quotes. Greet method prints a nice welcome greeting for Piyush. Let's go back to the code now. For methods that don't return a value, writing the return statement in its method body is optional. I have written no return statement in this method and it works fine. I can also write a return statement like this. Just the word return and then a semicolon. This will also work fine. Let me show it to you. Coming back to the method, if I try to return a value like this, then I will get a compilation error. As the return type of this method is void, so the compiler will not let me return any value from this method. Either I can write an empty return statement like this, or not write the return statement at all. Let's quickly recap this part. A method may or may not return a value. When a method does not return a value, its return type is void. In the method body, either we don't write a return statement, or we can write an empty return statement which is return followed by semicolon. Next, we will try to understand the use of return statement inside the method body. When the return statement is executed, two things happen. Program control is transferred from the called method to the caller method. The value specified in the return statement is sent back from the called method to the caller method. Let's try to understand both these points in detail through examples. Here, I have two methods, display and add. Add method takes two int arguments as inputs, adds them, and returns their sum as the output. The display method takes no inputs and returns no output. So its parameter list is empty and return type is void. It calls add methods by passing 4 and 6 as inputs to it. Here, let me remind you again that int a and int b are formal arguments of the add method. For this call to add, the actual arguments are 4 and 6. Formal arguments are specified in the method definition whereas actual arguments are specified in the method call. If I make another call to add like this, then actual arguments for this call are 10 and 20, whereas formal arguments are the same as before, A and B. Okay, coming back to the return statement. You can see that display method is calling the add method. So display method is the caller method and add method is the called method. Return statement transfers the program control from the called method to the caller method. So this return statement in add method will transfer the program control from add method back to display method. The implication of this is any statements written after the return statement in method body will not get executed. Java compiler is smart. It flags such unreachable statements as errors. Let me show it to you to make it clear. If I write any statement after this return statement, they will not be executed, so compiler will give error for them. See, compiling the program is giving me this error of unreachable statement, as this println statement will never get executed. Add method ends with this return statement. Let me remove this statement. Return statement also returns a value from the called method back to the calling method. Here, this return statement returns the value of sum back to display method. It is because of this reason that we can write the call to add method on the right side of this equal to sign. It means that whatever value is returned by the add method should be assigned to the variable result. At this point, let me execute this program and walk you through its working. It will make these concepts of transferring program control and returning value crystal clear to you. I'm right-clicking on the class here. It shows me the two methods add and display. I can select whichever method I want to execute. Since in this example, the caller method is display, so I will execute it. I got this output result equals to 10. Now let's go back to the program and understand steps involved in the execution of this program. As I executed the display method, program execution started from this line. This line calls add method with actual arguments as 4 and 6. These actual arguments are copied to the formal arguments of the method in the same order in which they are written. So 4 is copied to A and 6 is copied to B. Program control is transferred here to the first statement of add method. Adding A and B gives 10, which is assigned to variable sum. Program control moves to the next statement. The return statement transfers the program control back to the display method at this line. It also returns the value of sum that gets assigned to result. So variable result becomes 10. Program control then moves to this println statement that prints the value of result to the console. With this, execution of display method completes. I hope now you have a very good understanding of how return statement works. There is one very important thing that you must keep in mind regarding this value getting returned from the method. In this entire process of a method returning a value and that value getting assigned to a variable, data types are involved at 3 places. First is the return type of the called method. It is int for this add method. Second is the data type of the value that is getting returned. In this example, it is the data type of variable sum. And the third one is the data type of the variable in the caller method that is receiving this value. It is the data type of variable result here. These 3 data types should be compatible. If there is a mismatch in any of these data types, it will cause compilation errors. As you can see in this example, currently all the 3 types are int, so our program is compiling. There are no errors. Let me change the return type of this add method. I am getting two compilation errors. First error is complaining about mismatch between the return type of method add and the data type of variable sum. The second error is complaining about the mismatch between return type of method add and data type of variable result. Similarly, if I change any of these three data types, I will get compilation errors. Let me change it back to int. Program is compiling fine now. Now let's change the data type of result. Again, I am getting compilation errors. So I am repeating it again. The return type of the called method, the data type of the value getting returned, and the data type of the variable receiving the returned value in the caller method should be compatible. Let me revert it back. Okay, so our program is compiling fine. Another thing about return statement that will be obvious to you by now is that a method can return only a single value. Returning more than one value from a method is not possible in Java. If I try to return more than one value, I will get a compilation error. Let me show it to you. I have calculated the difference of A and B, and now I will try to return it along with sum. Let me compile the program now. So as you see, this is not compiling and I am getting an error on this line. So remember, a method can return only a single value. Let me revert back these changes so that our program compiles fine again. The next point about return statement that you must know is this. A method can have multiple return statements, but only one will be executed. Earlier I told you that statements written after the return statement are not executed. This point is an extension of that concept. Let's try understanding this through an example. I will add another method named subtract. This also takes two inputs a and b like add. In this method, I want to subtract the smaller number from the bigger number. That is, if a is greater than b, I want to return a minus b. Otherwise, if b is greater than a, then I want to return b minus a. I will first declare an int variable r and initialize it to 0. Next, I want to check if a is greater than b, but before that, I will add a println statement. This println statement will display the message check if a is greater than b. After that, I am adding the if check like this. Again, inside the if check, I will write a println statement. These messages I am printing will help us trace the execution of the program later. After that, I'll write r equal to a minus b. Now here comes the interesting part. After this, I will return r. Outside the if, I will again add a println statement. Then I will write r equal to b minus a and again return r. Our subtract method is complete now. Let me modify the display method to call subtract method instead of add. So here I am calling subtract with 6 and 4. I am compiling the code to ensure there are no errors. The code compiled successfully. Let's try to understand what is happening in this subtract method. As I said, you can have more than one return statement in a method. It is allowed. But only one of them will be executed. This if statement checks if A is greater than B. If the condition is true, B is subtracted from A and the result is stored in the variable R. After that, this return statement transfers the program control back to the caller method and also returns back the value of R. These statements that are after the first return statement are not executed if A is greater than B. Now let's look at the other possibility when B is greater than or equal to A. If B is greater than or equal to A, this if check will be false, so the statements inside the if block will not be executed. Instead, program control will execute these statements. Variable R will have the value of B minus A, and this return statement will be executed. So, even though subtract method has two return statements, only one of them will be executed. If these three statements are getting executed, it means that B is greater than or equal to A. Had that not been the case, the if check would have been true and the statements inside the if block would have executed. Hence, there is no need to explicitly add an if check for it like this. So this if check is checking if B is greater than equal to A, then compute B minus A. Now this if check is unnecessary. We should avoid writing unnecessary statements in our programs. So I will remove it. Next, let's execute this program and trace the execution line by line to get an even better understanding of this. I will execute the display method. We got the output. Let's switch to the program now. Execution starts from the first statement of display method. Subtract method is called. The actual arguments 6 and 4 are copied to A and B respectively, and program control is transferred here. Variable R is initialized to 0. After that, this println statement prints this line, check if A is greater than B to the console. Program control comes to the if check. As 6 is greater than 4, so condition tests true and program control enters inside the if block. This println statement prints this line inside if check to the console. The result of 6 minus 4 is stored in variable R. Next, this return statement is executed. It transfers the program control back to the display method and returns the value of variable R, which is assigned to variable result of display method. After that, this println statement prints this line to the console and execution of display method completes. Notice that these statements of the subtract method were not executed. We don't see this message outside if check printed on the console. It proves that program control didn't come to these statements. This return statement transferred it back to the display method. Now let's see the other case when A is less than B. I will interchange the values of 6 and 4 like this and execute the display method. Execution of display method starts from this statement. Subtract method is called. 4 is copied to A, 6 is copied to B. Program control is transferred to the subtract method. Variable R is initialized to 0. Check if A is greater than B is printed to the console. Program control comes to the if check. It tests false as 4 is not greater than 6. Program control comes to this println statement after the if block. The message outside if check is printed on the console. The result of 6 minus 4 is assigned to R. After that, this return statement transfers the program control back to the display method, returning the value of R that gets assigned to this variable result. This println statement prints the value of result to the console, and with this, execution of display method completes. We have come to the end of this lesson. Let's quickly revise all the things we learnt about return statements. Returning a value is optional for the method. Return statement transfers the program control and returns a value from the called method to the calling method. The return type of the called method, the data type of the returned value, and the variable receiving the returned value in the caller method should be compatible. No statement in the method block will be executed after the return statement. A method can return only a single value. A method can have multiple return statements, but only one will be executed. I hope you enjoyed learning about return statements. I will see you in the next video. Bye.